Hi beautiful people, welcome to my channel. My name is Konge and I make property, finance and fashion videos, and today we are talking property. About a year and a half ago I was in the predicament of like, should we buy an apartment or should we buy a house? And I did so much research on this because I wanted to make sure I made the right choice, and also I really dug deep and was like, what do I want, what's this? So I know since I've been through this, I'm sure a lot of you might go through this at some point where you're like, should I get an apartment or should I get a house? And I'm going to talk the pros, the cons and what I think. Yeah, today I'm going to add a little bit of my own personal thoughts as well, you know. Might as well. So obviously with an apartment, the absolute pros to it is that you get beautiful views. Basically, if you're like on a third floor and above, views tend to be like, especially if you live in like the city, like when you're at the top floor, the lights, everything, like it just looks so beautiful. The views are breathtaking, the views are refreshing. Like, you know, you don't usually get that in a house. Like you don't usually get that in a house. You get the views of your garden like, and maybe if you're absolutely blessed, you might get other stuff behind you. You might have like a farm or something maybe, and then you could see like animals or stuff, but usually it's a garden and more houses. Whereas an apartment, you get like just nice views, lights, buildings, the whole vibrancy of an apartment. And also you get a balcony, like, well, not in all apartments, but you can get a balcony, and that is definitely an advantage. Like, I remember chilling on my Juliet balcony when we lived in our first apartment, and it was just amazing. When it's sunny, you can go on the balcony, you can have a look at the views, you can just chill there, have a look, like, and it's just nice. And obviously if your balcony is big enough, you can have a little barbecue, you can have set up a little plant station, you know, you could spruce it up, and it is exciting. Like, if I'm to add, even though our balcony was not big enough, it was a Juliet, to have a barbecue, but you know, I've seen people that have had barbecues on their balconies, and I think that's pretty cool. And then also location of an apartment, I think tends to be ideal, especially like if you're in your 20s. That's the battle that I honestly was facing. I was like, well, in our 20s, do we really want to move to like the suburbs, or would we rather stay like in the centre, you know, right in the centre in an apartment, beautiful views, and you know, a minute's walk to this restaurant and that bar and so forth. That was literally the battle. I was like, do I really want to trade that for like a suburban place? Do you know? So definitely I think location with apartments, obviously you can get apartments that are like rooted in a proper like family area or so forth, but generally apartments, and some people might call them condos, flats, you know, depends where you are, but generally they tend to be like in a very like good location for young adults, and that's really like an appealing thing about them. The location really is like amazing. As I said, you could walk to like things that you love to do, as opposed to like having to get the taxi or train or tram or bus or whatever it is when you want to go out in the evening, weekends, lunches and things like that. Another one about apartments and condos, I feel from my personal experience, they tend to be a lot warmer than a house. I guess a house, because it's bigger, that's the trade-off really. So I mean, they warm up quickly, and sometimes, especially when you live like above, like we lived on the 5th floor twice, and literally the heat rises, so you find that you don't need to put your heating on as much as people that live in the house, do you know? So those are some of like the perks. But saying that though, with a house you do get so much more room, you know, it is so spacious, and you know, usually it is a lot bigger than an apartment, a house, and you get a garden, like you actually get your own garden. Like, that's a selling point, because you know, when you want to have that barbecue, as I was talking about before, in a house it's on a bigger scale, you know, you can actually invite lots more people, and you've got your whole garden there, you know, you can play in your garden. When you have kids, they can play in the garden. Yeah, so that's basically it. You can set up like a trampoline, which is what everybody seems to do actually, but yeah, you can set up a trampoline, I guess, and you could maybe put a greenhouse out there. And literally, I think the biggest advantage of having a garden is that when you live in an apartment and it's sunny, you're almost forced, unless you just squeeze onto your little balcony, you're almost forced to have to go to like a park one outdoor area like where you can chill. Like say like in Manchester, people might go to like Manchester Piccadilly Gardens, and then like they might just hang out there, lie there. A lot of people will lie there in the summer, or you know, they might find like local parks, and which are a bit spread out as well, being that it's in safe in the city and stuff. Or you have to generally go to a park or a local place to really just like enjoy the sun and lie there and just take the sun in. Whereas like obviously with your garden, you could just literally set up camp out there and you don't have to go too far, you don't have to be surrounded by people. And also another advantage with the house is the tenure is normally like freehold. Just to be clear, you can get leasehold in houses, but usually it's freehold. While like with apartments, pretty much 99.9% of them are leasehold. It's very rare that you get an apartment that's freehold, so that's just something to bear in mind. That's quite good about the house. You don't have to pay those extra charges of like ground rent. Yeah, and the thing about the house, which is also something that swayed me towards a house, was that when you're in a house, you feel a little bit more settled, you get more excited to put your stance on it, and it just gives you that, you just feel settled, so you feel like, you know, like you don't have to move that soon. Whereas an apartment, usually you kind of almost definitely thinking about your next step. You're thinking about, oh my gosh, like I'll need a big space, I might want to move to a house, and you almost definitely are thinking about that next step. Whereas the house, you can kind of feel a little bit settled, and you could almost take your mind off thinking about that next step for a little while, really. So that's beneficial. So yeah, and then obviously going on to negatives of apartments, and I think which is some stuff that also put me off a little bit, but can put people off. But literally the associated cost towards an apartment is a lot greater usually than a house. So basically with an apartment, you have a service charge. Service charge, obviously, because you're in a house, I mean you're in an apartment which shares a lot of communal things, lifts, entrance hall, reception hall, you name it. You share quite a lot of stuff, and all of those stuff have to be managed, have to be serviced, they have to be looked after. So you've got to pay towards that, basically. If you walk out your apartment, everywhere's hoovered and it's clean and it's swept up, you know, you've got to pay for that, because it's not like somebody within the block has volunteered to do it for free. Like the chances are it's a company and they want the money back really for their service. So you have to pay a service charge usually with an apartment. You have to pay ground rent. So basically, as I said before, you own so when you buy it, you own that actual apartment, the condo, the flat, you own it, but the actual land that it sits on, you do not own in most cases, which can be a disadvantage, because then you have to pay the person that owns that piece of land ground rent. This is something that you have to pay for most apartments, which is definitely a con, because in the house, usually, as I said before, it's probably freehold, so you don't have to pay that. And you look after the house yourself. You clean out your front yard, you clean out your garden, you do all of that, so you don't have to pay for service charge. So that's the thing about apartments that you have to consider. And some apartments, especially like in the centre city or whatever, some apartments, the ground rents and service charges can be quite extortionate, so you have to weigh that out. But some of them are very manageable, so you have to weigh that out. Obviously, another one is noise control. Basically, with an apartment, you can't really control the noise. It's a bit harder. They're all like, it's all plasterboard, it's not concrete around surrounding you. You and your next neighbour are literally separated by like wood, you know, like. So you can hear them, they can hear you. You can't play music too loud, they can't play that music too loud. If they, you know, it's things like that. Noise control can be so difficult in apartments, and the worst thing is to have a student neighbour or a neighbour that literally thinks it's okay to play music at 1 AM in the morning, or have friends over at like 2 AM in the morning and they're laughing out loud. Do you know, that's really hard to manage in apartments, and you can't really control that. When you buy an apartment, you don't necessarily know who your neighbours are, and obviously even if you do know who your neighbours are, the neighbours could change, because they could be renting and that could change within 6 months and so forth. So if you have a noise issue in an apartment, it can be a real problem, and that's something that can be off-putting. But obviously if you have nice neighbours and you guys are all like, you've got your rules, you consider it by 11 PM or whatever it is, 10 PM, no loud music, then it works, it's not too bad. So yeah, that's some of the disadvantages to an apartment. Disadvantages to a house is that the views are pretty much non-existent. Like, I don't know, like some people love views that you get from houses, you know. You got your garden, you've got some farmyard, you've got trees, but basically usually houses are 2 stories, so you can't see too far down anyway. For me, that's something that I've had to really like deal with in a sense, because we had an amazing view in our apartment, and now like my view is pretty much non-existent. I can see trees, guys. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. I guess that's part of like just give and take, isn't it? So in houses, your bills may be more. You've got bigger space to heat up. You've got bigger space to just operate in general. So your bills, you may find usually the bills in a house are more expensive than in an apartment. And also if it's an old house as well, it'll be a lot more than if you were living in an apartment that's fairly new. So things like that as well. I kind of touched on the whole new / old in another video where I'm talking about houses, properties, old versus new, and I touched on that, and I won't go too much into it right in this video now. But yeah, a house, which is something that put me off as well, was that a house feels a lot more mature. I think it's more like, actually this is like a really mature thing to do, like, if that makes sense. It feels very I don't know, like whereas an apartment, it doesn't feel as mature. Like if you're in your 20s, you're thinking to buy your first property, then you think, or your second property or whatever it is, but you're thinking to like get on the property ladder, then usually an apartment kind of seems ideal, apart from all of the other cons that I said, then the costs and stuff like that. But usually the apartment kind of seems more ideal because this doesn't feel as mature, but in a house you do feel that bit more mature. So it's just kind of weighing it up. And I think ultimately though, I'm not for us, we chose to buy a house because we just felt the pros outweigh the cons in this instance. But I mean, not to say that I'll never have an apartment, you know, or something like that. It's not to say like, oh my gosh, apartments are wrong. And obviously apartments are also, they can be very good. Depends on what you want it for, really, you know, for an investment or even just to like live in and stuff. Like they are really good if you don't mind, like if you've weighed it out, the service charge, the ground rent, everything, your expenses, everything seems fine, you've got beautiful views, all of these things, and you've weighed it all up and you're happy with all the cons. Like you might not feel as settled, etc, whatever it is, that the con that might be patent for you. That's why I think I love doing these videos, because it's just, you get all the information and then it just kind of gets you to think about it more, and then you can make a decision based on your personal needs. I don't think it's like one shoe fits all, do you know what I mean? And that's basically it. And you guys obviously know, like, I would love to obviously own lots and lots of properties. So doesn't mean I'll never own an apartment. So that's basically it. So there's the pros, cons, and yeah, thank you so much guys for watching. Hopefully you found this helpful and hopefully this was beneficial. If you liked it, thumbs up, share it with somebody that might find it of benefit. If you've got any questions, feel free to comment below or email me. Just feel free to get in touch and I'll add all my socials here. Yeah, thanks so much for watching guys. Have a lovely week and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.